Archaeological studies that challenge the story of biblical Israel from the Great Walls of Jericho to the Promised Land. It ain't necessarily so, investigating at 11:35. But now a roundup of Sunday's world news.
Northern Alliance ready to take Kunduz as Taliban crumble. US scientists announce cloning of first human embryo. And victory for Celtic in the Old Firm derby.
From ITN, the ITV Weekend News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Northern Alliance forces are tonight poised to take control of the Afghan city of Kunduz. They've demanded that Taliban fighters leave the city by morning. A hardcore of foreign Taliban still remain inside, however, vowing to fight to the death. Their defiance was echoed at a prison near Mazar-e-Sharif, where Taliban prisoners overpowered their Northern Alliance guards in a bloody gun battle. Tim Rogers reports.
Moving in on Kunduz late this afternoon, the Northern Alliance now has another victory firmly in its sights. It's been tightening the noose which surrounds the city, preparing for a Taliban surrender. And now the signs are that it's within hours of success. Tanks and extra troops have been pouring in following negotiations with Afghan Taliban leaders in the city, who have indicated that some of their men will switch sides, while others who are members of the Pashtun community in southern Afghanistan will surrender. The question that is still unresolved is what will happen to the large number of Taliban mercenaries who remain in Kunduz. Their determination to die fighting was illustrated yesterday in these pictures, when a foreign Taliban prisoner being taken into captivity pulled out a hand grenade and killed himself. At the fort of the Northern Alliance General Dostum at Mazar-e-Sharif, another large group of prisoners seized weapons from their guards, killing many more in the gun battle which followed. Northern Alliance leaders meeting today said they believe 3 aircraft flew into Kunduz to take some foreign Taliban out of the city 3 days ago. But tonight those who remain seem to be preparing to fight on, possibly to the death. Tonight it's hoped that the Northern Alliance move on Kunduz in the morning will not result in another bloodbath. But Northern Alliance leaders say that will depend on the Taliban mercenaries and whether they're prepared to give up. Tim Rogers, ITN, Taliban in northern Afghanistan.
The imminent fall of Kunduz leaves the city of Kandahar as the Taliban's last remaining stronghold in Afghanistan. That's renewed speculation about the deployment of British and American ground troops to sweep the Taliban from the rest of the country. Mark Austin reports.
Outside the capital Kabul today, a Northern Alliance commander is on his way to accept the surrender of even more Taliban troops. With their black turbans, these Taliban fighters have chosen to defect. They will keep their arms and take up the fight against their former comrades. The Taliban, it seems, is imploding fast. The Northern Alliance is now firmly in control of much of Afghanistan. It's taken Mazar-e-Sharif, Jalalabad and the capital Kabul. And the fall of Kunduz could well be complete tomorrow. That leaves the Taliban with its only remaining stronghold around Kandahar, its spiritual home. That will now be the focus for the coalition.
But military planners in the United States and here in Whitehall believe the battle for Kandahar will not be an easy one. It's likely to involve more American ground forces and quite possibly more British troops as well.
But such a deployment of British troops for offensive purposes will only happen if the Americans ask, and there's no sign of that at the moment. And some experts believe an all-out assault on Kandahar might be counterproductive in the hunt for bin Laden.
The occupation of Kandahar by the Taliban doesn't prevent the British and the Americans pursuing bin Laden in the mountains. In a sense, it bottles up about 10,000 foreign fighters, and if they're bottled up all winter, that's all to the good.
The other use for British troops could be to help the huge aid effort now getting into swing. But ministers say much will depend on the meeting of Afghanistan's political factions in Germany this week.
I think whatever happens in the future about British, American, international military deployment will depend very much on what comes out of the Bonn talks, what the new broadly based government thinks it needs, what the United Nations thinks it needs in terms of support.
This evening, the view of the British government seems to be that things are going well in Afghanistan, but this war is far from over. Mark Austin, ITN.
An American company is tonight claiming to have successfully cloned human embryos for the first time. The scientists involved say they'll be used to treat diseases and not grown into human beings. But the breakthrough has raised concerns among campaigners. Dan Rivers explains.
The historic first cloning of a human embryo was carried out by this private company in Massachusetts. Scientists here say they won't allow the embryos to develop into cloned human babies, but say they want to mine them for so-called stem cells, which could eventually be used to find cures for illnesses such as Parkinson's disease. Put simply, scientists have taken a human egg and removed its genetic material, the DNA. They then took adult DNA from a different human and implanted it into that empty egg. Scientists say the egg reprogrammed itself to grow into an embryo, which would be a clone of the human donor. The company claims embryonic stem cells may eventually be used to help transplant patients grow their own organs from a variety of cells in the body.
Liver cells, heart muscle cells, cells for diabetes. And so even though it involves cloning, a very controversial concept, we think the future can be quite bright for people who are sick with incurable disease today.
But there are fears that in the wrong hands, the technology could be used to create a cloned human baby.
Where it goes, where it leads to, we don't know. But to clone a human being, that is getting long away from where I believe the Congress wants to go at this point.
Dolly the sheep was cloned using exactly the same technique. The team in America says it won't go that far with humans, but there are real concerns now that less reputable scientists may go that step further. Dan Rivers, ITN.
Parents at the Holy Cross Primary School in North Belfast will be able to walk their children to class tomorrow without protests from loyalist demonstrators. Residents from the loyalist estate close to the school have called off their 12-week-long blockade. They agreed to end the protest after the authorities promised a new package of security measures, including CCTV cameras. The government is facing another embarrassing setback over its transport policy with the publication of a damning report tomorrow. The study, commissioned by ministers, claims we suffer the worst congestion in Europe and some of the highest fares. Ross Childs reports.
Major roadworks on the M8 outside Edinburgh this afternoon, and now it's official. Britain has the worst traffic congestion, the longest commuting times and some of the highest public transport fares in Europe. The report's author says it's all down to lack of money.
The reason why the UK does not compare well with our European competitors is because we have consistently underinvested in transport for 50 years. And it's ambitious for the government to try and put that right within their 10-year transport plan, but they really do have a mountain to climb.
That transport plan is designed to make journeys less crowded and cheaper by pumping £180 billion into roads and rail. Transport Secretary Stephen Byers, still coping with the recent crisis at Railtrack, admits there's still a lot to do.
I take the view that we do not have a transport system here in the United Kingdom that we can be proud of, and that means I've got to take the difficult decisions that will make a real difference.
It may come as no surprise that this country's transport system is the worst in Europe. It means that the beleaguered Transport Secretary is now under even more pressure to get Britain's traffic moving. Ross Childs, ITN, Central London.
Police in Switzerland have confirmed that 24 people died in the plane crash near Zurich airport. All the bodies have been recovered. Air crash investigators are now examining the plane's flight recorders. Here's Chris Shipp.
As the rescue teams continue to pick through the wreckage today in the woodland where the plane came down, the search for survivors was called off. The flight from Berlin to Zurich was carrying 28 passengers and 5 crew. Remarkably, 9 people were able to walk away from the wreckage, most suffering from burns. At a Zurich hospital, passenger Miriam Wettstein told how she escaped from the burning plane. She described how passengers were screaming and shouting as fires started blazing. She says she managed to climb over the seat to a hole in the plane where she jumped out. The jet was just 2 miles from the runway when it crashed late last night in poor weather conditions. Both flight recorders have been recovered, but there are no indications at this stage that terrorism was to blame. Eyewitnesses report the plane appeared to be flying too low and say it burst into flames after it hit the ground. It's the second fatal crash in as many years to hit Crossair, and yet another blow to the airline industry trying to build confidence after the terrorist attacks. Chris Ship, ITN.
Football now, and there was plenty of drama in the Premiership today. You can see the highlights of all the action here on ITV1 after this programme, so look away now if you don't want to know the scores. In Scotland, the champions Celtic extended their lead to 10 points after beating their Old Firm rivals Rangers 2-1. Graham Miller reports.
The second Old Firm derby of the season, and again Rangers in the blue simply couldn't afford to lose. They began brightly enough and might have taken the lead from Torrey Andre Flo, but when you're on top in these games, you have to score. Just ask Celtic. When their chance came in the second half, Belgian defender Yus Valhaeren made no mistake. It's only November, but the title could already be in the bag. By the 68th minute, Celtic were 2 up. Henrik Larsson was brought down by Bert Konterman. He missed the penalty in the Ibrox game, but the Swedish striker's nerveless. Rangers then substituted Michael Ball, and he could get into hot water for giving his opinion of his manager's decision. Rangers grabbed a lifeline 15 minutes from time when Peter Lovenkratz finished off a good-looking move, but it wasn't enough. Clear victory to Celtic. Celebrations for Martin O'Neill. His side now 10 points clear. The championship is theirs to lose. Final score Celtic 2, Rangers 1. Graham Miller, ITN Sport.
In rugby union, Wales failed to find their form against an impressive Australian side, losing 13 points to 21 at Cardiff's Millennium Stadium. Wales took an early lead through a Iestyn Harris kick, but the world champions came back strongly. Matt Burke scoring from 7 penalties. Gavin Thomas did manage a consolation try, though in injury time. And a reminder now of the main news. Northern Alliance forces are tonight poised to take control of Kunduz, although a hardcore of foreign Taliban inside the city have vowed to fight to the death. And an American company is claiming to have successfully cloned a human embryo for the first time. And that's it. Next on ITV1, the Premiership. But from me and all the weekend news team here, good night.